Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecini. We are presented by The Athletic. Today on the show, Adam Spinella is in the building, and it's mock draft season here over at the Game Theory Podcast. We have not done a 2023 NBA mock draft in a while where Spins and I go back and forth, diving into picks, breaking down players. We also have not done one yet in this cycle where we would be specifically breaking down fits for players to specific teams. So what we have done here, we have created a draft order. The draft order is currently based off of what the standings are. We did not do a tankathon spin. We did not do a lottery spin. That means the Detroit Pistons are the number one team. As you can see below, I will have a running ticker of all of the picks that we make throughout this process if you're watching on YouTube. If not, if you're watching or if you're listening on the podcast feed, you are going to have to just kind of keep track in the best way possible. Maybe use a pen and paper. That might work. I am super excited to get into this, though, Spins. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be thrilling. I have not talked about a ton of draft recently. As people know on the channel, I've been breaking down tape. You've come on a few times, broken down tape with me on the playoffs more than anything. But that doesn't mean that behind the scenes I haven't been grinding tape on draft prospects. Typically around this time of year, I'm right around like 15 profiles done on the draft guide, something like that. Right now, I am through, I think, 36 of them, which means I am way ahead of where I typically am in terms of my final evaluation on players. Basically, I've done every first-round pick save for 2 or 3 at this point, and I'm really excited to maybe be able to share that with you guys a little bit earlier in the cycle than what we did last year when it came out during draft week. So really excited about all that stuff. Hit the like and subscribe button over on the YouTube channel, please. It really helps more people find out about the channel, really helps people come join us as we're breaking all of this down. Also, by all means, ask questions in the comments. We would love to chat and break down questions that you guys have. I think that that would be a really, really exciting part of this that could be enjoyable. So, Spins, that is 2 minutes and 20 seconds of me talking. How's it going, buddy? It's good to see you. I've got the Peacock Nation shirt on. We're rolling with St. Peter's today. Let's go. How you doing?
And I'm great. I've got my BL Lakers gear on here, my hat, my sweater, the jersey in the background, like everything here. We are ready to go. I'm excited for this. I always enjoy doing these. Like, please, folks out there who are watching this live, engage with us in the comments section because we want to be able to discuss some of these picks as they're ongoing, the pros, the cons, the team fit, things like that. Sam, I always love coming on, and you're a good friend of mine, but it's all business at this point here. So you are the enemy for the rest of the evening, and if we celebrate by the end of this, I may indulge myself and eat a giant red velvet cupcake live on air. Still muted there, my friend.
First question here from Alex Yu. I'm super excited about your red velvet cupcake. That sounds great. Alex asks, will there be no trades? No, we're not getting into that, Alex. I'm sorry. Like that just becomes way too complicated in my view. Also important to note, this is based on what Adam and I would do. Closer to the process, we will probably do something, maybe I will do something a little bit more predictive in terms of what I think will actually happen on draft night. I will go through whatever my mock looks like, at that point over at The Athletic. The Athletic does get all of that written work. It's hit or miss, but I will make sure and share all of that with you guys as well in terms of what I think will happen. Having said that, this one is going to be what Adam and I would do at each spot. Now, Adam has done a significant amount of work into this class. I have done a significant amount of work into this class. Adam's content is public right now. You can go to Adam Spinella, the YouTube channel, and go look at all of the scouting reports he has done. He's probably done, 25 of them at this point, something like that?
33. We're trying to keep up with you on the draft guide.
So go over to Adam's channel. You will find an immense amount of work that he has done to prove his expertise. My expertise is not public yet in this class. I have certainly done a top 100 board earlier this week over at The Athletic. If you kind of want to keep track of where I'm thinking on this and follow along as we're going through this, you can read my top 100 board. Another question here from Lawrence Field. What is your over-under on trades before and during the draft? If you can give that information anymore. I mean, look, it's a guess at this point. Those trades have not happened yet. I would say that it's difficult to say, but I think that throughout the lottery and throughout the latter portion of the first round, there's a good chance we could see some movement for sure. One issue throughout this class, in my opinion, in terms of the trades, is going to be it's difficult to find the trade targets at the highest end of the NBA right now. Like, what superstars are going to come available? Damian Lillard is obviously a name that people bandy about. I don't know if Damian Lillard is going to get traded. That is a decision for Portland that feels like it could be very complex and convoluted. There are certainly some potential, it seems like, for Memphis to make a shakeup. There is some potential for, X, Y, and Z team. The Clippers could try and do a shakeup deal. The Orlando Magic could finally try and go in because they have 2 lottery picks this year. And anytime you have 2 lottery picks, when you have as much young talent as the Orlando Magic do, I would not be surprised to see them try and consolidate a bit of that moving forward. Utah has multiple picks, although I think they will be likely to use those picks throughout the process because I think they want some younger talent coming in the doors. And of course, we're talking about all of this before the NBA draft lottery. And that becomes very tricky as well. As soon as the lottery comes out, we will also be going live on lottery night immediately after the lottery in order to break down everything that occurred during that entire process. So it'll be great. We'll probably do a mini mock draft. We'll do takeaways, everything like that. The best way to do this, I'm seriously telling you, the best way to get all of the content, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You will get to watch all of this live. You will get to watch everything that we go through. Okay, Adam, that is now 7 minutes basically of me preambling this mock draft. Adam, do you have anything you want to say before we get started?
I don't think so, Sam. I'm ready. I'm fired up here. Our staff on my end has put in a ton of work this scouting season to get eyes on everybody, and we're just going to make the best fit for our organization.
I'm here for it. Adam, do you want to go first or second here?
Sam, I would love the opportunity to go first because it just allows me to gush a little bit longer about my favorite player I've ever scouted.
I love it. Let's do it.
So, with the first overall pick in the Game Theory podcast mock draft, the Detroit Pistons select Victor Wembanyama. And this is no surprise at all to anybody who has been following this draft cycle for a while. He's about 7'4" with maybe an 8-foot wingspan. Just completely ridiculous measurements for a guy who's been playing professional basketball in France. This year has shown just how dominant he can be on the defensive end of the floor. He uses his length and his wingspan to protect the basket, but he's got enough of fluidity, mobility to play up at the level against ball screens, to maybe switch a little bit on the perimeter and corral guys who are in space. He erases all these shots at the rim. And then on the offensive side of the floor, he's got an 8-foot wingspan. You can throw the ball up to him when he rolls to the basket or he's standing near the rim, and he slams it down very easily. But he's so much more than that. Incredibly fluid with the way that he moves, got a unique handle that allows him to rebound and run, play in the open floor. He's explored the space this year, is the term that I keep using to describe it. This has been a year all about seeing if he can
Adam, are you there?
We're back.
Momentarily. We're back.
We
go.
We are back. He's proven he can be a number one option, Sam. Really a lot of upside for him as a shooter, unguardable in the mid post and late clock situations. Really, really good in transition. I want to keep emphasizing that point because I think that it's an area where he creates such a marginal advantage for his team. I'm not worried about the injury stuff. I think 10 years of him at his absolute max is more than worth anybody else in this draft. I maintain he's the best prospect I've ever scouted.
Yeah, I think there's a real case for that on my end as well. Certainly in terms of upside, he is the best prospect I've scouted. I mean, this is a guy that I think comes along very rarely within basketball, a player that could genuinely change the game in a very substantial way. You're talking about a player with the dimensions that Adam mentioned, whose handle is as creative as I have seen for a big, let alone a super giant like Victor Wembanyama is. I think that's the biggest key here. He is genuinely a player that changes the geometry of the basketball court. You watch him in the French league and you just see a player that defensively, there are some things he'll have to work on, certainly in terms of like his technique, in terms of drop coverage. And there are going to be times where just being 7'5", he's going to get out leveraged. Guys are going to get their hips and shoulders below him and they're going to get by him. In the NBA space, that is a real thing, certainly. But these are the nitpickiest of nitpicky concerns. This is a guy that is leading the French league right now, a fairly high-level professional league, in rebounds, points, and blocks. And he's leading in blocks by literally double what anybody else has in the league right now. To say that he changes the trajectory of the court is an accurate statement in that league. The thing with Vic, in terms of a question we have here, is there any injury concern for Victor Wembanyama? I will occasionally get the NBA person that says, look, I want to be clear about this. There is no NBA team that will not draft Victor Wembanyama at number one, like unequivocally. This does not affect it. I will occasionally get an NBA person that reaches out to me and says something along the lines of, they ask the question, how do you think Victor Wembanyama will hold up over the course of the grind of an NBA season? Because this season, Victor Wembanyama has played every game for Metropolitans 92. They play about once a week, once every 6 days, something like that. There are, times where they play in the middle of the week, times where they play, 3 or 4 days off during the season. But in general, they play about once a week. Last season, when he played for Asvel, that was a EuroLeague team and a French league team. They played something like, I think Vic played something like 31 of the potential 75 games that they could have played. It's like, that's the ballpark number, right? What I will tell you is, throughout the course of his career, Victor Wembanyama, for instance, last season, he missed the end of the year with a muscle injury. He had a bone bruise earlier in the year to his shoulder. He had a finger injury that missed a couple of weeks, right? He has occasionally, in a very Anthony Davis-ian kind of way, picked up some nicks that have caused him to miss some time. And I think that everybody has known the score with Victor Wembanyama since he's been incredibly young, knowing that this is an elite talent and knowing that we need to be conservative with this guy in terms of his future and in terms of injuries as he continues to build strength. Those are real things that are worth discussing with Victor Wembanyama. They do not impact anything, though, with Victor Wembanyama and his overall draft status as arguably the best prospect we've seen since LeBron James. So all of that out the door. Again, I think this is a guy that has a chance to really be that like once in a occasional generation center prospect, right? Like Wilt Chamberlain, Arvydas Sabonis, Shaquille O'Neal was a guy like this. I think that Shaq, in his status as a prospect, often gets underrated in these like great prospect discussions that people have. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, certainly, and Bill Walton as well. Those are two guys that might be, two of the greatest prospects that we've ever seen. And the fail rate for these guys tends to be very low. Insofar as like, even Yao Ming was someone that people were very excited about 3 years out from his draft cycle, right? Because he was this 7'5" kid from China that was just absolutely enormous and kind of changed, again, the trajectory of basketball and geometry of the basketball game. Even Yao Ming, before his injuries, was like a multi-time All-NBA center who was well on his way to being like one of the all-time greats in basketball, to the point where he is a Hall of Famer based off of what he did in his limited NBA career that was hindered due to foot injuries. So these guys tend not to miss when they come around. I have very few doubts that Victor Wembanyama is going to be an utterly elite player in the NBA. This is an all-NBA potential best player in the league talent. And those guys come around very, very, very rarely. Okay, Adam, I am up. This is the Houston Rockets. To me, this is an easy selection. I am not someone that particularly thinks, I guess that I don't think that the race for number 2 is as close as others do.
Okay.
I have Scoot Henderson as the very clear number 2 player in this class. I think that there is some disagreement among NBA teams in regard to that, but to me, it is not that difficult. I am going Scoot Henderson at number 2. Scoot Henderson, to me, is one of the best guard prospects I've ever evaluated. I think that what happened this season for him in the G League, he was super impressive. I think sometimes we don't stop and consider enough how unbelievable Scoot Henderson was this season playing professional basketball with the G League Ignite. This is a guy that lived at the basket whenever he wanted to, also has shown real capability to stop and pop in the mid-range area. The three-point shot is a developing skill set, something that he will need to be able to continue to work through. But he is very strong for a smaller guard, 6'2", with something in the ballpark of a 6'9" wingspan, from what I've been told. He is an unbelievable athlete and an unbelievable competitor. This year, I think that he was a competitor that did not have a lot to play for in the G League. And that made it a little bit trickier for him at times to try and build up that steam, especially when throughout the course of the last little while, he's been told forever, the whole goal here is for you to get drafted at number 1, number 2 overall. The whole goal this year was basically wrap him in bubble wrap and just get him through the season, right? He got through the season. I think that's why we saw some of the settling throughout the course of the year in the mid-range area that people tend to harp on. I think that's why we saw Scoot is a guy that got injured a couple of times this year. He had a broken nose at one point, like a bruise on his face at some point, I remember. Had a strained knee of some sort that I remember. So I think that by the end of the year, the goal was basically, let's get through to this draft cycle. Let's get him to the NBA as much as we can. And this is a guy that is a genuinely elite level, explosive, athletic talent. He gets to the rim at will whenever he wants to. And I think that skill set is going to translate to the NBA. And I am a big believer in the passing ability as well. This is a guy that can score 20 points per game, but I think his passing and playmaking ability is drastically underrated in comparison to his other skills. And when you look at what Houston needs specifically, I think that what Houston needs is a guy that can be a culture guy, a culture reset guy in terms of that competitiveness, in terms of bringing out that fire and that aggression. Scoot Henderson is that guy. Pairing him with Jalen Green in the backcourt, I think is going to be, or could be, if this ends up happening, an absolutely elite level, perfect level fit to get the most out of both of those players. I adore the fit of Scoot Henderson in Houston. I think there is some potential to be able to run some interesting actions with Alperen Şengün there, especially with Jalen on the weak side. They have Jabari Smith, who can be an incredible floor spacer long-term, even if the shooting this year was hit or miss. I'm still a believer in Jabari Smith. To me, Scoot Henderson is the highest upside player remaining, and I think he is a future All-NBA player. I've gone Scoot Henderson at number 2 to Houston.
I think those are shrewd picks for the Rafael Stone stand-in that we have here on the podcast tonight. And the fit makes perfect sense to me. Love the way that Scoot Henderson is wired from a mental standpoint. To me, that's always been the most impressive part of Scoot. He has every skill in the book that you would want to be a high-volume pick-and-roll creator. He's an unbelievable athlete, but it's his competitive DNA, the intangibles he brings to the table, and how he manages a basketball game in finding the right balance between when to score and take over and when to facilitate for others that just has me so impressed in him long-term. I'm a big, big, big fan of Scoot here. Was hoping he'd slide to me at number 3, but I think this was, like you said, the kind of no-brainer pick right here. I tend to be in the same camp as you, Sam, that there really isn't that competitive of a race for the number 2 guy in this class.
Yeah, and I respect Brandon Miller. I respect Ausar Thompson. I think from an upside perspective, you can get to a point where if you really buy into Ausar Thompson becoming an elite level half-court creator, I think you can come up with an argument for Amen Thompson having a higher upside than Scoot Henderson long term. I think there is a lower floor with Amen. I think Scoot is a safer player with a similar upside to Amen Thompson long term if things really, really break right. But let's move forward to number 3. We're at 20 minutes through 2 picks. We knew we would spend a lot of time on these top guys, obviously.
Sure.
But let's go. The San Antonio Spurs, number 3 overall, Adam Spinella.
Yeah, and this one, I think you just foreshadowed, there is a little bit of challenge for me in trying to figure out, do I go Amen Thompson or do I go Brandon Miller? But I am going to take the guy who I think fits the Spurs and their team culture a little bit better, and a guy who, if he can be in that San Antonio system that is so consistent over time at developing guys into positive jump shooters, he becomes a really complete player, and that's Amen Thompson from the Overtime Elite program.
Wow.
6'7", unbelievable athlete. And we think of athleticism sometimes too much just in terms of the vertical ability. He is an unreal vertical athlete. But the most impressive thing to me is how he goes from stop to start and is able to blow past players from a standstill to get into the lane. At the end of the day, what I value on the offensive end of the floor are guys who collapse defenses first and foremost, and then who can punish defenses that do collapse on them. And one thing that Amen has proven this year is that he can be a really good finisher above the rim. He's got nice touch below it, some cleaning up and simplification that I think would do him justice, but he has shown touch, and he's a really good passer and playmaker off of the live dribble. So what I value that he brings on the offensive end of the floor is something that, if you add a jump shot to it, makes him an incredibly lethal player. I agree there are some concerns right now about what he's shown in the half court. The Overtime Elite program and its trajectory is an unproven one. There's always going to be risk with taking a guy like Amen Thompson over one of the most proven scorers that we've seen in college basketball the last few years in Brandon Miller. But I believe in the developmental system that we have here in San Antonio to turn guys into good jump shooters. With that said, Amen Thompson checks every other box in the half court offensively. He's long and versatile and athletic on the defensive end of the floor. I'm feeling really happy if I'm RC Buford coming home with him.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's a real case that you can make a genuine argument that Amen Thompson has the second highest upside in this draft class. I think that the way he is twitchy with the ball in his hands is genuinely special. His ability to create in full court scenarios, we talk often about how those OTE games turned into, full court, just back and forth, transition fests. I will say that the reason that I think that happened was because of the Thompson twins.
Right.
I think that when you watch other games in OTE, they tend not to be as transition heavy as the Thompson twins games are, only because the Thompson twins are such elite level athletes and because they can get up and down the court like nobody else in that league. And look, they were older in that league. They were older guys. They were more mature in terms of their games. What I will tell you as well, in terms of the background on the Thompson twins, I love them. I've met them.
Yep.
You can watch the YouTube clip I did with them breaking down tape for 45 minutes. They are awesome. They are like really high level, high character kids that really, really work on their games and really understand the court. Now, where I get, again, like where my concern is that I feel like they have not gotten important developmental half court reps all the time in the way in live game action against higher level players that are in their age group that we have seen from other players. And it might take them a little bit more time, specifically Amen is more of a point guard, to develop that skill set. Having said that, I think he's awesome.
Yeah.
And I absolutely adore his twitchiness on the ball, his creativity, just the way that he thinks about basketball, I think is incredibly high level. I think that his feel for passing and making plays is unbelievable. Defensively, we've talked about before, it's a little bit more hit or miss than what I think people give credit for.
Yeah.
And in part, it's because they could so impose their will athletically on the game at that level. Amen has a lot of like moments where he stands way too high in his stance, gives up a little bit more dribble penetration than what you'd like to see on closeouts, or even like just in pick and roll defense from time to time.
Yep.
But he's elite in recovery, and he wants to defend and has every single tool in the toolbox imaginable to be a great defender. So I think this is a totally reasonable pick. I think that you might get some questions about whether or not you should have done this, but yeah, I am a big fan of Amen Thompson in general.
Well, and look, and now I end up with a core in San Antonio of Amen Thompson, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, 1 through 4. That can become a real defensive juggernaut. And I feel really good about, if we can turn Amen into this number 1 option, we've got a really, really good team on both ends of the floor.
From Seasons and Sloan, I think this is a good question. Does the draft community overestimate the ability to teach players shooting skills, especially from square one, like Amen? I think this is an intriguing question to ask, in all honesty. And I think that I personally don't really buy Amen's touch level right now in a way that is a bit concerning to me. And whenever you're pairing him with someone like Jeremy Sohan, that is a real concern, because Sohan is kind of starting from square one in terms of a shot profile as well, from distance at least. With Amen, the things that worry me in terms of his touch profile is when you see him at full speed in half-court settings, he has a very creative mind in terms of finishing angles, and like he'll throw the ball up with English off the glass. He'll throw the ball up from very intriguing angles. I do think that he can get sped up and kind of throw it off the glass a little bit at times in a way that is just a touch more concerning. I believe more in someone like Leonard Miller, that we'll get to later, is a shooter who very clearly has like real touch on like floaters and touch shots around the basket and all sorts of different little things. I think that it's going to be a little bit easier to work on his shot than it is Amen Thompson. He doesn't have Amen Thompson's athleticism, passing ability, playmaking ability, everything like that. But I am a little bit more concerned about Amen's shooting than what I think the public draft community is what I would say. And that's why I have Scoot very clearly ahead of him.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. For me, it's almost because of his athletic tools, his size, his quick first step, and how good he is as a passer. He doesn't need to become a great shooter in order to be really functional in the half court. He's just got to be good enough that people have to pay attention to him outside the 3-point line. He's got to be good enough that teams can't just go underneath ball screens time and time again and try to beat him to spots in the lane. If he can get to that level, which he's still decently far away from right now in terms of the consistency of mechanics, but if he can get just to an adequate level as a shooter, watch out. Like, he is so dangerous.
I think that is dead on. Okay, I am up at number 4 now.
Yeah.
So let's go here. I'm a little bit more torn on this than people think. I am going to go Brandon Miller here, but this was not a no-brainer for me at number 4 for what it's worth. And we'll talk about the guy that I'm like a little bit more in on the more I watch him later on. But Brandon Miller is terrific. Brandon Miller is a 6'9", elite level floor spacer, great shooter. I know that the numbers tailed off a little bit later in the season, but this was one of the best players in college basketball this season. Undeniably, he was a first-team All-American for a reason. Averaged something like 20 points, 7 assists per game throughout a large portion of the season up until a late season swoon. Was a clear 40% three-point shooter. The thing about Brandon Miller that I think was a little bit underrated is that his mid-range package that he didn't show this year is actually something that was what he was known for in high school. And if you see the little flashes that we showed, or that he showed throughout the course of the season, you will see that like he does really interesting things. Like there's been some talk about him having a low release point from the 3-point line. He actually raises that release point from the mid-range area in order to get shots up over the top of players in that area. There is some real question about his finishing package based on his early season finishing struggles. He improved drastically as a finisher throughout the course of the season to where by the end of the year, I thought he was actually really effective and impactful as a finisher. Attacking closeouts and being able to get guys in switches, being able to string out switches at really high levels. I thought that his handle is actually very strong for somebody who is quite skinny at this point. So I think Brandon Miller is a very real, very likely top 5 pick. I will say, I think there is a wing that has a little bit more upside than him long-term, and we'll talk about it momentarily. But Adam, what is your thought on Brandon Miller, who, as Mr. Ray here says in the YouTube comments, very strongly believes has 3-level scoring potential? I do buy that. Yeah. I think he does.
Yep, totally agree. And at 6'9", with the ability to play off ball that he brings as well, like offensively, there are just too many skills here to see him dropping farther than this on many draft boards. I've had him in serious consideration at number 3 overall. I just like the fit with Amen Thompson a little bit more in San Antonio. Look, Miller has improved so much throughout 1 year in college basketball that it's really hard to punish him for the poor start that he had to the season as a finisher. I do think he's a little bit slender. I do wonder about the consistency of how he's going to be able to finish against size in the NBA. Like, it's gotten better, but I still don't know if it's where you'd ideally want it to be, at least from a first step explosion separation standpoint. He's a really, really good scorer. And I think that this is a shrewd pick on your part.
Okay. Do you want to just go straight into number 5 at this point? Let's do it.
Yeah. Let's go to number 5, Portland Trailblazers. For me, we're at a flexion point right now because of the Damian Lillard things that are going on. But I am just going to look out for the best interest of this franchise and take who I believe is the best player available and the best player long-term. That is Cam Whitmore from Villanova.
So, yeah, this is the guy that I was alluding to in the last pick with Brandon Miller. I think Cam Whitmore's upside is through the roof if things really break right. His athleticism in intersection of power with first step and explosiveness in general is like, that part of it is Anthony Edwards. Like, he doesn't have as fluid of hips as Anthony Edwards, which I think is going to hinder him as a shot creator, particularly in the mid-range areas. But as a 3-point scorer and as a rim pressure threat, I think Cam Whitmore has a chance to be genuinely special.
He is the stuff of my nightmares, Sam, because I actually coached against him when he was in high school, and it did not go well for my team. So obviously I've seen and followed his long-term trajectory for a while. He's still 18 years old, really young player who missed a decent amount of time his freshman year in college, as well as chunks of 2 seasons in high school. I think that the sky is the limit for him continuing to add to his repertoire in that regard. About 6'6", with really, really strong chiseled frame. Like you said, the intersections of speed and power and athleticism that he brings to the table are incredibly, incredibly rare. He has to learn how to become a little bit better of a decision maker with the basketball, because his assist rate in terms of creation this year at Villanova was historically low. You need to hope that with more reps, with more time as he ages, that can grow to an adequate level, because he's a guy you want to put the ball in his hands because of what he can do, breaking guys down one-on-one or just out-muscling them. On the defensive end of the floor, I think he can guard 2 through 4. He's still got a lot of mechanical things to clean up there, but this is a major high upside pick. I love the thought of Cam Whitmore and Shaedon Sharpe together on the wings here in Portland. Just the athletic tandem that those two guys bring allows you to do so much from a roster construction standpoint, but both really, really young potential stars with a lot of untapped potential that would play off of each other really nicely. Regardless of what happens with Damian Lillard, if I'm a Portland Trailblazers fan, I'm really happy to see Cam Whitmore come to us.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the passing and playmaking is the absolute thing that you really have to be worried about with him. The overall feel for the game, it's not even just the passing and playmaking to me. It is this idea that he often pauses when he catches. Like you see it infiltrate almost all parts of his game. For instance, where he's wide open for a potential catch and shoot three. And I completely buy him as a shooter. Like I am not worried about the jump shot long-term. He made 40% from three off the catch this year. He has real body mechanics and balance to be able to get into his pull up off of step backs. I think he's going to be fine in terms of being a high level shot creator and being a high level shooter off the catch. I don't know if he's going to be a movement shooter because of that lack of hip flexibility,
Right.
but I do think he is going to be a very high level shooter off of the catch. Where my worry with Cam is that pause. Like you even see it infiltrate his shot prep directly off the catch, right? Like he seems like he's very rarely prepped, like in terms of, I'm just going to go, I'm going to take this off the hop and I'm going to go. He has that like strong wrist flick, it feels like, on the shot. But it feels like the shot prep in terms of his balance and in terms of like being ready upon the catch to just catch off the hop and fire. He does prefer to go off the hop. There is not always that there, in my opinion. That was bad English, but whatever. You also see it in terms of the passing. Like he will dance from time to time on the perimeter. He is a capable ball handler to where he like tries to like make it happen a little bit on the perimeter, a little bit more often than what you would like to see. What I would say though, in general, is that where I actually like Cam the most outside of the scoring ability is the defensive end.
Yeah.
I see here that Evan Glansman in the YouTube comments asked, what about defensively? I think he's actually like a very high level on ball defender. And I think he showcases some flashes of being a potentially useful off ball defender in weak side rim rotations. And in terms of being able to scramble, dig down using his length, using that power that he has through his hands to be able to disrupt guys driving on the ball. I actually think Cam Whitmore, that's the difference between him and someone like Ben Mathurin last year, who I also loved athletically and who made an incredible impact this season as a transition player and as a player off the catch for the Indiana Pacers this season. I think that Cam's defense is way more advanced. He's also only 18 years old. Yep. People need to be prepared. There's like a non-zero chance I end up with Cam Whitmore at like 3 or 4 on my board, as opposed to like having him. I might have him ahead of Brandon Miller. I think they are very close in my mind, and I keep going back and forth on those two in terms of who has the highest upside moving forward.
I think the underrated part about Cam's defensive ability is going to be his versatility, because he's so quick and he's so strong. You can guard up the lineup with him because nobody moves him in one-on-one situations. I think that allows a lot of, again, roster flexibility and versatility to play him at different spots in different lineups and cahoots with other guys. We've seen in the playoffs for the last couple of weeks how important it is to have that lineup versatility on the defensive end of the floor, and Cam unlocks that. I'm really happy to have him in Portland.
Okay. I'm up at number 6. This is the Orlando Magic here. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky for me, because this is where I start. This range of players is where I start to really think about team fit. And when I look at the Orlando Magic, I see a team that really just does not need any more of these bigger wings. Like we talk a lot about big wings and how multi-versatile and valuable they are league-wide. I mean, this is a team that has Paulo and Franz Wagner and Wendell Carter. Look, I don't know what's going to happen with Jonathan Isaac this summer. I can't even begin to guess there, but they also have Chuma Okeke. I'm not a Bull guy, but like that's another player that is in their wheelhouse here. If I'm them, I'm looking for guys who can space the floor. I'm a believer in Markelle Fultz being a starting level point guard in the NBA. I don't know that he is quite like a top 15 level point guard in the NBA at some point, but I think he's a starting level point guard in the NBA. I'm looking for someone that can get my guys the ball. Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero, both of whom I think are high-level potential all-stars long-term. And I'm looking for someone that I think fits with Jalen Suggs, because I think Jalen Suggs is a very real long-term potential high-level guard in the backcourt in the vein of a Marcus Smart, who is going to be really, really impactful. While I think the highest level outcomes for Jalen Suggs that both Adam and both I and Adam, I think, believe Jalen had, I don't know that those exist quite as much anymore.
Yeah.
But I do think that his defense is already so good that it's going to be hard to keep him off the floor in the NBA, especially given that the offense is growing and like he is getting better on that end. So this is a tricky spot then, right? Because I don't really want to overdraft Gradey Dick here at number 6, even though I think that's frankly probably the guy that they most need. They also have a pick at number 11 that is intriguing. They have kind of an undersized big at the center position already in Wendell Carter, who is, in many ways similar to Jarace Walker. Jarace is more switchable. Jarace is, a little bit more of a 4, whereas Wendell's a little bit more of a 5, obviously. It's actually really hard to come up with the guy to pick here. I am going to go with Taylor Hendricks here at number 6. He is my number 6 player right now. And I know that I said that I don't really think they need another one of these bigger wing types or like bigger, forward types. There just isn't really anybody else on the board that I love. And where I'm really excited about things for the Orlando Magic potentially is running out lineups of Franz Wagner, Taylor Hendricks, Paolo Banchero that would be switchable, that would have the weak side requisite rim protection that you're looking for with Taylor Hendricks. That's like 6'10", 6'10", 6'9", with all sorts of length across the front line. That is having Taylor Hendricks and his ability to be switchable on the ball at a really high level. That is having Taylor Hendricks' shooting ability to be able to space the floor for your 2 stars that are already in place, in my opinion, in Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero, both of whom I think project as long-term top 25 players in the NBA. This is a not necessarily positional fit or a positional need, but I do think it's something that ticks a lot of boxes from a skill set perspective for the Orlando Magic.
Yeah.
And I'm a big Taylor Hendricks fan.
Yeah, you've ruined my night thus far, Sam, because that was who I was eyeing on the clock next. I think you said it right. It's a great skill set fit as opposed to just a positional fit. And when you're the Orlando Magic and you have 2 selections here inside the lottery, I think you can afford at number 6 to just go with the guy whose skills and upside and could be the best player available out there, and worry more about finding positional fit and that type of value a little bit later if they hang on to the pick at 11. So I think this was a sound strategy on your part. And
it also doesn't hurt that this is like the exact guy that the Orlando Magic tend to look for in the draft, right? Super long, super rangy, athletic, young, high upside. This is like a Jeff Weltman and like John Hammond fever dream, Taylor Hendricks. Why not Anthony Black? He's a great passer. Anthony Black was the other guy that like was high on my board for them. I worry about a fit with him and Markelle Fultz and Jalen Suggs in the backcourt is why I ultimately did not go with Anthony Black here. I think that lack of shooting would actually be quite concerning, but 6'7", rangy, long, very good defender, does tick a lot of boxes for the Orlando Magic. I thought Hendricks was a little bit better of a fit here. I think that's a great question from Declan F in the comments.
Yeah. Good fit and good pick on your part, Sam. Thank you for spoiling my night here.
Okay. You are up at number 7 with the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, and the Indiana Pacers are in need of a guy who fills many of the similar traits that Hendricks does. So we are going to take Jarace Walker from Houston right here. 6'8", 6'9", big man with a 7'2" wingspan, strong, sturdy frame. I do believe that he can guard 1 through 5 in certain stretches, much more of a power wing who's going to match up against really good wing scorers in the NBA. He can play some small ball 5 due to the versatility that he brings on the offensive end of the floor, not just how he can guard up with his length and strong frame defensively. The last thing I want to hit on defensively for him, great instinctual help defender. He covers up a lot of the mistakes of other guys. Sometimes it pops in terms of how he blocks shots. Other times it's very unsexy and just he's so positionally sound and always where he needs to be in ways that cover up the mistakes of others. Offensively, not a high volume threat on that end of the floor, but a developing jump shooter who has really turned into a fairly consistent threat, spotting up in the corners in particular, as well as a little bit above the break. I don't think the Houston Cougars this year utilized all of the skills that he brings to the table on the offensive end enough to be that linchpin piece in the front court. He's a very good short roll passer. He can play a little bit more as a pick and roll type of big. He's a smart playmaker from the middle third of the floor if they're going to run action through him at the elbows or in delay series when he catches it at the top of the key. I really worry about rim pressure and how he would when he puts the ball on the floor, he tends to settle for floaters a lot. That's not something you want to see out of a 6'9" power bowling ball. He should be able to get to the line a little bit more. He should be able to use his frame on the interior. But he's a smart decision maker, a quick processor, an elite team defender who unlocks versatility and schemes in so many different ways. I love the fit for him offensively playing next to Tyrese Halliburton, where his role can be simplified, and with Rick Carlisle, a really smart offensive coach who's going to utilize his playmaking in so many different ways. I'm thrilled about being able to get Jarace Walker here at 7.
So we bring up the idea of Jarace Walker being a guy that needs to get rid of the floater, or at least not take it as often, right? What do you think Jarace Walker shot on layups this season in half-court settings at the basket?
Probably not that high of a number. I don't know.
40.6%, according to Synergy. I worry a little bit about his touch around the basket. I like the way he moves. I think he moves really well. I think he moves at almost an elite level if you're playing him as a big, right? I think he moves fine for a wing, right? Like there's a difference there in terms of what I'm trying to parse through with Jarace. I think Taylor Hendricks moves really well for a wing, despite his length and size. I think Jarace moves at a slightly lesser version of that. But I think Jarace's overall help scramble instincts particularly are better than Hendricks's.
Yes.
So I think he's a little bit more impactful defensively than what Taylor Hendricks is in those settings. I think Hendricks is a little bit better as an on-ball switch defender than what Jarace Walker is. So it comes down to, would you rather have Hendricks' shooting, or would you rather have Walker's like passing and playmaking and overall brain for basketball? I think it's situational depending on what your scheme is. Personally, I would rather have Hendricks the more that I watch him, but I think that there's a real case for both. And I think that in this scheme, next to Miles Turner, seemingly as a good building block long-term, utilizing him in some of those really creative actions with Tyrese Halliburton, with an Andrew Nembhard, with maybe a Chris Duarte long-term. We'll see what that looks like. I think there, and certainly with Ben Mathurin, being able to find him on cuts to the basket, being able to find him in really creative situations. I would love the fit with the Indiana Pacers for Jarace Walker. I think that it is absolutely ideal in many respects, and I think this is a really, really good opportunity.
No, I appreciate that, Sam. I'm 4 for 4 here, so you got some catching up to do.
Clearly, I am up with the Washington Wizards now. This comes down to 2 guys for me. It's a little bit of a trickier decision than what I thought. I am going to go Anthony Black here. And the reason that I'm going to take Anthony Black is I have long loved the idea of the Washington Wizards pairing a bigger, longer, defensively oriented point guard with Bradley Beal, basically since John Wall's injuries, right? I think that what the Wizards need more than anything, point blank period, surrounding guys like Kyle Kuzma, assuming they pay to keep him in the offseason, like Kristaps Porzingis, like Bradley Beal. They need somebody who's just going to get them the ball in the easiest spots, someone that processes the game at an exceptionally high level, someone that is going to make the game easier for those players. I don't agree with that long-term core as what I'd be trying to build. I would be trying to do something entirely different if I was Washington, and whoever their GM ends up being, be it John Thompson the third or somebody else. How John Thompson III ends up as a acting general manager in the NBA eludes me, but this is where we are. I would not, this is what I'd be looking to do if I have this core and if that's what I'm going for long term. I would be looking for somebody that makes the life of my star players easier. And I think that is what Anthony Black's superpower is, his processing ability, his ability to understand the game. I think he's way underrated as a rim pressure guard. That situation this year at Arkansas from a spacing perspective was an absolute fucking nightmare because they had nobody who could shoot from behind the 3-point line other than at times Nick Smith. So I think it's a circumstance where this is a team and a fit that just works across the board to make life easier for those stars.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I agree with you. I have been longing for some sort of a bigger point guard next to Bradley Beal who can play different positions defensively, because that's what Bradley Beal really needs, is somebody to alleviate more of the defensive burden and just take opposing perimeter matchups from him. Look, anybody's guess for what the Wizards are going to do directionally, who they hire, what things end up looking like long term. So taking the best guy available who fits with the star player who's in town is never going to be a wrong decision on your end.
Yeah, Tyler Hines here asks in the comments, why not Ausar? Ausar was the number 2 guy for me here. Completely, like that is one where I was like completely 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I think you could pick one or the other and it would be totally fine. I personally like the idea of getting more of a true point guard there. I think Ausar is an unbelievable passer for a wing player. I think that I trust Anthony Black to get the ball to the stars and make their life a little bit easier than I do Ausar. If they decide to blow this thing up and not go down this road of building around Bradley Beal, Kristaps Porzingis, Kyle Kuzma, then I would absolutely take Ausar over Anthony Black. But given where they are right now, I would go Ausar Thompson. Or I would go Anthony Black over Ausar Thompson right now.
Sure. That makes sense to me.
Okay. You are up at number 9, Adam.
And this one is still a tough decision for me, because there's one guy who I've always really loved and just believe in his long-term upside. There's another who I think is more scalable to multiple types of roster situations in the NBA and impacting winning in a way that just doesn't handcuff the Utah Jazz on their what is seemingly going to be a longer term type of rebuild as they reshape this roster. So I'm actually going to go with the guy who gives more long-term positional flexibility while being an elite connective piece, and that is Ausar Thompson from the Overtime Elite program. 6'7", 6'10" wingspan, a very different type of athlete than his twin brother Amen. Not quite as twitchy, not quite as bursty near the rim, but still a really high level athlete. Look, you've used this comparison point before, Sam, a little bit of an Andre Iguodala-ish type of player, where he just does so many good things as a high basketball IQ guy, a ball mover, a point of attack defender, a really smart team and help defender. Of guys who are not 6'10", he's one of the best weak side rim protectors that I've seen in a long period of time. So there's so many team things that he brings to Utah right now that I'm excited about. He's not an elite shooter. He's gotten better throughout the season and really peaked at the right time. Not necessarily a guy who's going to create his own shot in the mid-range by any means. I think that handicaps his upside to be seen as a number 1 overall option, which is where Amen ends up going 3rd overall right now, and Ausar in the later part of the top 10. He's just not quite as good at creating for himself, but a really great passer, an awesome connective field guy, versatile as hell on the defensive end of the floor. And if I'm Utah sitting here, I feel really good about the different ways that this franchise can go, knowing that we've got at least 1 year to maybe explore what it looks like putting the ball in Ausar's hands a little bit more, and then just feel everything out from there.
Yeah, like for instance, for Utah fans should be excited a little bit about Talen Horton-Tucker, I think. I think Ausar is kind of like a super powered version of what we saw later in the season over Talen Horton-Tucker's last 20 games or so. in terms of being able to create at a really high level, athletically at the very least. The other thing that I think is impressive about Ausar that goes underrated, and where I think he's actually at an advantage in comparison to Amen, his finishing package around the basket, I think, is really impressive. He has a lot of like these little running hook shots. He has a lot of these little floater type of opportunities. Like he has a very high skill level, and he has very good footwork and sequencing in terms of his footwork to get into areas around the basket that I think are really impressive. Tyler Hines asks, what is Ausar if the shooting doesn't come? It is a fair question in the modern NBA. That's kind of why I bring up the idea of Andre Iguodala often with him. And Andre figured it out just based off of being an elite level defender, an incredibly hard worker, someone that just thinks the game at an exceptionally high level and is a very mature human being. Ausar is like a very mature human. And I think that he's going to kind of figure out ways to impact the game regardless of if the shooting doesn't come. If the shooting doesn't come, he's not a, top 30 player in the league, top 40 player in the league or whatever. If it does come, he's probably that, right? Like that'd be elite. Yeah. But right now, I think it's hard to project the shooting to come. But I think there is a chance it comes based off of his touch around the basket and some of the work he has done over the course of the season to improve in that respect. Someone asked as well, do you think the Jazz are likely to try to package picks to move up for anybody? I think that's very possible. If I was Utah, I would want to keep that pick that's around I think it's 15 or 16 right now.
Yeah, 16.
I would want to keep that pick if I could. Utah obviously has a billion picks moving forward to be able to like really try and skyrocket up the draft board. There's also the factor that this is the class to do that in versus 2024, when the 2024 draft upside is not as high. I wrote about that in the most recent big board. You can go read that in terms of where I'm at in the 2024 draft. But I think there's a non-zero chance they could be a team that looks to do that. If there is somebody they fall in love with, like an option for them realistically could be, do you try and like get 2 picks in this area and try and get both the Thompson twins? That'd be really fun, in my opinion, for Utah to go for. And I think Utah would really love the idea of having these guys that are 6'7", 6'6", bigger, longer, athletic wings, guards that can create at a high level, pair them next to Lauri Markkanen, and certainly long-term, pair them with Walker Kessler. I think there's a lot of potential utility there. And they're a team to watch for sure, I think, to try and move up in package picks for a guy.
No doubt. So that means you are now on the clock at number 10.
Okay, I am up at number 10. Number 10 is the Dallas Mavericks. This one is a little bit more challenging for me than I anticipated, but I'm going to go Cason Wallace here just purely based off of fit. Cason Wallace is someone that will make defense easier for the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks desperately need to find guys that can play high-level defense, that can play with and without the ball in their hands, but preferably without the ball in their hands if they continue down the road of having Kyrie Irving on this roster after they acquired him earlier this season. Cason Wallace is the kind of guy that could be a very high-level on-ball defender. He can take on 1 through 3 assignments at a really high level. He's just somebody that makes life easier for everybody on this roster. I believe in him as a shooter. If you look at his numbers earlier in the year before the back injuries hit, they were really, really solid. He shot like 40%. He has really good mechanics off the hop. I think that you can probably run him in some decent actions, maybe not the highest level actions in terms of like speed, like a Duncan Robinson or somebody like that. But I think you can utilize him in some off-ball actions to get him open. And again, defense is what it comes down to. I think this Dallas Mavericks team, if they are going to build around a Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic core, they need to find somebody next to those guys that can be the elite on-ball defender, pressure guy that they need. That's Cason Wallace to me. This at number 10 is just a perfect fit for the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, I love it there, Sam. I was considering Cason at 9 just because I absolutely love him and his upside. I think it gets a little bit underrated through this draft process. We talk a lot about how secure and safe he feels because of the defense and what he brings on a nightly basis. But as you said, before the back injury, 40% from 3. We know what the Kentucky effect is with these guards who come out, right? They always perform better in the NBA. He's shown some chops as on a ball creator, 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio after taking the reins as kind of their starting point guard. Like, there's a lot of tools to work with here. I think his offensive role can grow beyond what he was able to show at Kentucky. But at the end of the day, if he's just got to go out there and be like a glorified Pat Beverly, he can absolutely do that.
So 2 things here. First, this pick goes to the New York Knicks. If any of Orlando, Oklahoma City, Toronto, or New Orleans jump the Dallas Mavericks on lottery night, I believe there is something like what is it? I think it's like 25% or something like that.
Yeah, like 21 maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. So important to note that this pick could be going to New York if it's at number 11. Number 2, from Jeffrey Chen in the YouTube comments, this pick is getting traded. If they retain this pick, very good chance it's getting traded. Strong agree with you, Jeffrey. I think that this team desperately wants guys that can help them win now around Luka Doncic. I think Cason Wallace kind of fits across the board. I think he's going to help you sooner while also being able to help you down the road and be a cheaper option. As we know, the new collective bargaining agreement is going to be particularly disadvantageous and onerous on teams that want to pay the tax and go way over into that second apron area. If I was Dallas, barring like a star player coming available, I would be looking at keeping this pick personally. But I don't know that they will think that way. I think there is a good chance this pick gets traded personally.
Yeah, I think that's
you are fair. Up at number 11, Adam.
I am, and it's really not that much of a decision for me. Orlando Magic here. We made a selection earlier, which I believe you took Taylor Hendricks, and now we need a little bit more fit. Gradey Dick is the guy available here. You talked about him potentially at 6. Like, this is an Orlando team with Banchero, Wagner, now Hendricks. They have the ability to be super, super big and long and versatile. They've got some really good guards who are not necessarily the most consistent floor spacers, and guys like Suggs and Fultz. Let's get a 6'8" three-point shooting specialist. And Gradey Dick, elite movement shooter, somebody who has a really quick release in spot up situations, but very good off of pin downs and wide down screen actions, really good off staggers and so many different creative sets, because Bill Self is a great X's and O's coach who utilized him well at Kansas. I do have some concern about the pull-up jumper. Like, I don't think he creates a ton of space or separation, particularly when going to his left. So you can run him off the line and have a little bit of success, but good touch as a finisher, again, 6'8" with good length, and a solid pull-up shooter when going to his right, as well as being a decent passer in a connective sense. Defensively, a lot is going to be made about Gradey Dick throughout the remaining month and a half here of this draft cycle. He is not a poor defender in my frame of mind. I think he's a heavily targeted defender. He's a guy that other teams are going to seek out possession after possession because he's most likely to be the weakest link on his team. But he is long, he's got decent instincts, and he does care and compete. And if you're the Orlando Magic and you have this much length and versatility around him, I think you can find the appropriate ways to either hide him so that he gets targeted less frequently, or help him out with all of that length to scramble, switch around, and not be mismatched elsewhere when you do have to provide extra blanketing for Gradey Dick. So I like the fit in Orlando.
Yeah, I think Daniel Lavian asks a very good question in the YouTube comments. How does his defense compare to guys like Jordan Hawkins, Brice Sensabaugh, Jett Howard? I think he is certainly better than Brice Sensabaugh and Jett Howard. I think that Jordan Hawkins I think he's more effective than Jordan Hawkins is right now defensively. I think Hawkins probably has a little bit more upside long-term if he gets stronger. I think that physical frame is like a real concern for Hawkins, that he could also be somebody that gets magnet hunted in the NBA if he doesn't get up into that like 200-pound range, frankly. But Gradey Dick, I think, is a smart rotational defender. He knows where to be. His communication, I think, sometimes can be a little bit hit or miss defensively. I think there were some exchanges where it seemed like there was a breakdown that involved him a little bit more often than other guys on Kansas. I don't think he is a disaster defender because I think his hand-eye coordination is really strong.
Yes.
And he's 6'7" is the thing, 6'8". Like, he's a bigger dude.
Yep.
And yeah, I think this is a great pick. I think this is an awesome pick. I'll be honest with you, I might have gone a different direction based off of what I talked about before. We might talk about that. Actually, no, we'll talk about that now because Connor Burrell in the comments asked the question, what about Kobe Bufkin as a guard who can play with Fultz and Suggs? I think Kobe Bufkin is the ideal fit for a guard that can play next to Fultz and Suggs that allows them to stay like not small in the backcourt. Like Kobe Bufkin, 6'4", 6'5" has long arms, but is very complete and well-rounded. I think that would be kind of the person that really ticks a lot of boxes for them, depending on, or regardless of where they go in terms of Fultz or Suggs as their long-term option. I think this is a really good option for them. It would have been very difficult if I had to make this pick between Gradey Dick and Kobe Bufkin. Having said that, I am up at number 12, and I am going to do something that is going to surprise people. I am going to do something that Adam Spinella is going to yell at me for. I'm taking Leonard Miller for Oklahoma City.
I knew it.
And I love Leonard Miller. I am very in on Leonard Miller. I have Leonard Miller at 13 on my board. Leonard Miller, over the course of his last 15 or so games in the G League, averaged 20 points, 13 rebounds, 2.5 assists versus 1.5 turnovers, shot 55% from the field, I think like 34% from three, something like that. This is a guy that did not have a ton of basketball experience at the highest levels coming into this season. He did not get a chance to play high-level AAU basketball, unfortunately, because he broke his wrist in his summer or so between going from Wasatch to Victory Rock in Florida very briefly. Did not get a chance to play super high-level basketball. Also a guy that is still learning how to be 6'10". Like this was really his second season of basketball being 6'10". He was something in the ballpark of like 6'6" when he was at Wasatch. And because of that, I think there is a lot of upside remaining in Leonard Miller's game. This is a guy who has very unique movement skills in terms of the way that his limbs look like they're flying everywhere. He looks like he's off balance. Trust me, I've talked to him. He's not off balance in those moments. He is completely fine in terms of being able to maintain his balance and aggressiveness. The aggressiveness is key. He isn't somebody that just absorbs contact well. He does absorb contact well. He is the guy by the end of his season with the Ignite that was initiating contact against guys that are on average probably 6 or 7 years older than he is in the G League, more physically developed. The fact that he's already there physically in terms of his strength and ability to maintain that balance through his core, through his legs, through his upper body says a lot to me about what does this look like when he's 23 or 24, let alone when he's 26 or 27, right? He's going to really, I think, be a problem for defenses to solve. Now, Oklahoma City. Why Oklahoma City? Why do I love this fit? I can't imagine a person to put better next to Chet Holmgren. He is a high motor, high level rebounder who is super aggressive on the glass, who is going to grab and go, who is going to create opportunities in transition for this team that loves to get up tempo. They have Chip Engelland as a shooting coach now. Chip Engelland is one of the best shooting coaches in the league. He is someone that's going to really work with Leonard Miller on fixing that shot. Leonard Miller is an elite level finisher in terms of touch finishes around the basket. Great touch with the right hand, great touch with the left hand. Can throw down and dunk on dudes if he has to, but he has that little floater game with the right hand that is really impressive. I think if he would go to a place like Oklahoma City, I think he would shoot long term. And if you're giving me a guy that is 6'10" with a 7'2" wingspan, who has a 9-foot standing reach, who is still learning defensive assignments, I think, in terms of help defense and everything like that, who has potential to be a very switchable on-ball defender. This ticks every box for Oklahoma City in terms of what they're building. Oklahoma City loves these guys that are bigger, have great positional size, high-level character dudes, which Leonard Miller is, high-level intellectual thinkers, high-level potential development prospects. This is a fit that, like, I will continue to want throughout this pre-draft process. I am in on Leonard Miller. And I think that it would be phenomenal for him to go to Oklahoma City.
You make a really compelling argument, Sam. You really, really do, because he fits them to a T. And I never want to discount how impressive production is as a teenager against high-level professional competition. And Leonard Miller was able to put that up this year. I do have my questions and my concerns about the shooting and the shooting touch. I think that there's a lot to reconstruct in that form. And if he's not shooting, I do have worries about what his role is in the half court offensively. So I am skeptical. While acknowledging the upside that you have completely talked about here, I am skeptical. I think the easier pathway forward for Leonard Miller is to embrace being that number one defensive option against other stars. Yeah. Maybe a little bit of a Jared Vanderbilt or a Jaden McDaniels type of role where you are to come in and make all of the offensive players on your team's roles a little bit easier. And if we can develop you as a jump shooter where you can space the floor, we'll get a lot out of you. But if not, you're a lot more of a cutter, a movement guy, a finisher near the basket where your touch comes into play. So I get it. A little higher than I would have gone on Leonard Miller here. But for the fit in Oklahoma City, I think this does make sense.
I think his upside is enormous in a place like that. You put him in the dunker spot next to Chet Holmgren spacing the floor. You run all sorts of different stagger actions with him and Chet as screeners. I think it is an immense ceiling for him in a place like that. 24 seconds here mentions, I think the Thunder should trade down. I actually go the opposite way on that. Like, I think that is like something they would be very unlikely to do, frankly. They have so many picks that they can try and move up the board and try and go get a guy that they adore in the draft. I think they'd be more likely to do that personally. If things really, really, if someone that they love falls down into that 5 or 6 range for whatever reason, it wouldn't surprise me if they tried to do that more so than, kind of move down the board and end up, accumulating more picks. The thing that they don't need is more picks. They need to kind of consolidate their picks, if anything else. So,
Sam, what do you think about Taylor Hendricks in Oklahoma City?
Yeah, great potential option. I think like really high level potential option for them. Would fit and tick a lot of their boxes, in my opinion. That's a really good one. I think that Leonard Miller is a really good one. I think that you can make a case for Jarace Walker. I'm like a little bit less sold on that one personally for them. Because again, I think I'm lower on Jarace Walker than people are, I guess. Maybe that's just kind of where I'm at. I think Jarace is like a little bit more of a big than a wing. I think Leonard has better movement skills than Jarace. And I would rather take the flyer on that, even though Jarace is undeniably like a much better defender than Leonard Miller is right now. If I'm Oklahoma City, though, I'm like kind of looking to move up and go get the guy that I target more so than move down and try and accumulate more assets.
Sure.
Okay. Adam, you're up at 14 here.
I believe 13 with Toronto.
13 with Toronto. Yeah.
13. And Toronto, another strange team to try to predict what they're going to do, what Masai Ujiri really has looked for the past several drafts or in acquiring this roster is insane positional length and just figuring out the rest of it later. I think we've seen enough over the last couple of years to know they need a little bit of yin to that yang, that there's got to be some more balancing going on. So without knowing what to do with the guys that are on this roster currently and who's going to be back, I think I got to continue to go after a guy who I think is going to be the best player still on this board. And that is a man who from February 1st onward this year in college basketball averaged 17.5 points, 6 boards, 3.5 assists on essentially 50-40, really 50-45-90 splits. And I'm sorry to do this to my friend Sam Vecini, but that's Kobe Bufkin, the guard from University of Michigan. Really big fan of Bufkin. And I know you are too, but again, 6'4", 6'5"-ish guard with long arms, blocks a lot of shots at the point of attack defensively, gets through screens well, and contests from behind. I think he's a really good point of attack defender while having a little bit of positional versatility because of his length. On the offensive side of the floor, I don't see any holes in his game. I think the only hole that he has thus far is that he hasn't consistently put together what he showcased this year as a number one option for long enough. And if he can make all of this come together and sing, the Raptors are getting that backcourt scoring option that they so desperately need. A self-creator, a good passer for others out of the pick and roll, a guy who's got a really efficient form in spot-up situations. He shot 70% at the rim this year, which is absurd for a guy who's a guard. His touch with both hands on the inside is great. He's got real burst and gets low to the ground when driving. I'm a huge Kobe Bufkin fan. You and I have been talking about him back and forth for the last couple of months. He continues to soar up my board right here. I think Toronto would be an awesome landing spot for him.
I agree. This is my highest rated remaining player as well. I think this is exactly what I would do. The one place where I will push back just slightly on Kobe in terms of like where are the concerns offensively. I would say that his handle right now is not wildly strong. In terms of bag, like he doesn't really have like a great bag to be able to create off the bounce, in isolation situations, right? I think it's coming. Like he's a creative mind. It's just a physical strength thing as much as anything. And where I'm actually really worried about him is teams that blitzed him. Like you go back and you watch the Rutgers game where like Cliff Omoruyi is like flying up the court, right? And like really like crowding him as a big in ball screens. He has a real tendency to pick up the ball in those circumstances and not be able to like string out those guys and maintain that potential mismatch opportunity, right? I think that for me, that's the place where he has to grow the most. I think he will. If it comes, I think he is like a very high level starting guard in the NBA. I am a big Kobe Bufkin fan, but that's the one place where I'd push back very slightly in terms of where his weaknesses are. Tyler Hines in the YouTube comments asks, Bufkin had Jett Howard and Hunter Dickinson and Michigan underperformed. Is that a red flag? I prefer Hood-Schifino. It's a flag, but for me, it's not a flag for Kobe Bufkin. And I will tell you why. If you look at their on-off numbers, Kobe Bufkin, the team was so much better when he was on the court. Kobe Bufkin, I think they were plus 10 when he was on the court, and I think they were minus 11 when he was off the court per 100 possessions. It was by far the biggest on-off split on that team. They were a fucking nightmare when Kobe Bufkin was off the court this season. I think that that's a red flag for another guy that we'll talk about later. And we'll talk about those numbers later on. But I think that Kobe is not the guy to bring that up with. I think Kobe Bufkin played a critical role in the Michigan defensive turnaround later in the year. Do you know where Michigan finished defensively in the Big Ten this past year in terms of defensive rating, Adam?
No, I don't.
Second in the Big Ten. They were the second best defense in the Big Ten this year in Big Ten conference play. Yeah. And I think that is a credit to, honestly, Kobe Bufkin being around, B, Jett Howard being out of the lineup a little bit later in the season, and C, Hunter Dickinson getting better in drop coverage. I think that is the thing that kind of went underrated throughout the course of Hunter Dickinson's junior season. He got better in drop coverage scenarios throughout the course of the year. So there are a number of factors here. I think this is a great question, but to me, it's a question that does not impact Kobe. I think it's actually a question that makes Kobe Bufkin even more impressive when you dig into the data.
Yep, totally agree.
Okay, Adam, you are up, or no, am I up at 14?
You're up at 14, right? Yeah.
Okay. Oh boy, this is the New Orleans Pelicans, and I don't feel great about, frankly, like any of this. The Pelicans are in a very strange position where they have Zion Williamson and they have to be building around Zion Williamson. They have these other guys that are extremely interesting. Like I love Dyson Daniels. I love Trey Murphy. I really like Herb Jones's defensive ability. I think he's probably one of the 20 best defenders in the NBA. They have Jonas Valanciunas in the middle. as a potential option that they can continue down the road with, or potentially not. They have CJ McCollum, obviously, as an aging lead guard that will be impactful. And obviously, they have Brandon Ingram, who was one of the best players in the league, basically from like the last 30 games of the year onward, 25, 30 games of the year onward. So they really probably should just be taking best player available on some level, I think. But the best player available has to be someone that really works with Zion Williamson, because that's where their ceiling comes from long term. And my best player available at this point is Dereck Lively. I don't love the fit. I kind of like it. I kind of don't love it. I'm talking through this because I don't really know what I'm going to do, right? I didn't come in with a plan here. Dereck Lively is interesting for the Pelicans because of that high-level defensive upside. And if you believe that Zion is going to be a spacing threat just due to the gravitational force he can put on defenses, due to his leaping, due to his ability to drive, the Lively fit does work defensively. And by the way, this Pelicans team is one that defensively, like, did not live up to its immense potential at times this year. If you look at the full season numbers, they finished 6th in a defensive rating, I believe. But there were moments where it seemed like a bit of a slog and a bit of a struggle. This is hard, man. This is one where I think I would. Yeah. This is one where I would move this pick, if I'm being completely honest. I would definitely look to move this pick. I am going to take Dereck Lively here. Okay. I don't feel great about it, to be completely honest. Yep. I think that the upside defensively and the length is intriguing for them at the very least, but I would be looking to trade this pick, like almost certainly, if the board fell this way. I would love Gradey Dick here. I would love Kobe Bufkin here. I wouldn't love Leonard Miller here particularly. I would love them to try and maybe move up to get like a Taylor Hendricks or somebody like that. I would be intrigued by an Ausar Thompson, given the success that they've had with guys like that. But this team does have like a potential long-term need at center. The Jackson Hayes experiment could be ending this year. And then Jonas Valanciunas is not getting any younger. You know, he turns 31 in a couple of days, honestly. So center is a potential position of need. So I'll go Dereck Lively here. You can sell this on Dereck Lively. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the instincts to potentially shop the pick, if this is the way the first 13 fall, does make sense for New Orleans. I really do believe in Lively as a defender. Really great instincts. And as we get farther down in this draft, like everyone wants to talk about fit. And then best player available, best player. Like there's some sort of a combination that you need to really fall into for each team. And if you don't feel like there's a good fit on the board, just take the guy you think is most likely to stick in the NBA and be a long-term difference maker. And I think that Lively has really high upside to be that, because he can be a dominant defender on the interior.
7'2" something like that. 7'7" wingspan, enormous length, like enormous length. Great instincts in drop coverage defensively, but also versatile in the way you can use him in screens. You can have him fly out and be a switch defender, or not really a switch defender, but you can have him fly out and hard hedge. You can play flatter at the level with Dereck Lively. I think that there's going to be a lot of scheme versatility there defensively that you can utilize with him that will be valuable for them. Seasons and Sloan asks, does Walker Kessler's rookie season impact Lively at all? Maybe a little bit. The guy that honestly I think of a little bit more with Lively is Mitchell Robinson in terms of being like a low usage offensive player that's going to crash the offensive glass exceptionally hard, be a very high level rim runner, high motor player, great athleticism, great length, great tools. I think the fact that Dereck Lively the fact that Mitchell Robinson has proven that he can stay on the court in playoff series and like be impactful probably helps Dereck Lively a little bit more than even Walker Kessler's rookie season this year.
Totally agree with that. And if you want to see him in that Mitchell Robinson type of role, go watch their first game against North Carolina this year. So impactful near the rim, and he just wanted every loose ball and 50-50 ball. Completely changed the complexion of that game for the Blue Devils.
Yep. Okay, we just went an hour and 20 minutes on the lottery. Let's try and zoom through some of these later picks a little bit quicker. Not like, giving them the short end of the stick, but like we probably need to speed up a little bit.
Yeah,
you're up at number 15 in Atlanta.
You got it, boss. I'm probably going to shock you and a lot of people out there with this selection. It's really different, and it's probably not even what you're expecting here, Sam. But the guy who, at this point in the draft, I think has the highest ceiling still available. And if I'm Atlanta, and this is the type of player.
Can I guess who you're taking?
You can guess.
I think you're taking Sidy Cissoko here.
I am not.
Okay, then yeah, let's see.
I am taking Gigi Jackson from South Carolina.
Yeah, I think this is a crazy pick. I think this is a crazy pick.
He is the youngest player in this draft. And with a frustrating freshman season at South Carolina come a lot of factors, whether they are self-inflicted or just in the environment that he played in, that made this a real challenge for him. I get that there are some ideas of character issues floating for him off the floor. I get it that he was not engaged at all.
Well, and let's be... While we do that, let's talk specifics about that, because I don't like just throwing out like the character questions.
Yeah.
It's an immaturity question. He went on Instagram Live after a game this season and very publicly questioned his coaching staff. If you go through, South Carolina games, you will see that like he kind of seems separated from the team in terms of like huddles and things like that. Teams notice these things and they have real questions about Gigi Jackson's maturity in general. I know what you meant, and I don't mean this like negatively, but I like being specific when we talk about that, because I think it's unfair to throw blanket, character concerns out.
Thank you for making that clarification there. With all of those potential red flags that are already out there, this kid has made unbelievable strides as an offensive player over the last 18 months. For him to go from what he looked like as a younger guy in high school in the AAU circuit to being a guy who should be a senior in high school, who's hitting mid-range step backs and step backs out to three, unbelievably polished one-on-one isolation moves. We don't talk enough about the ceiling for Gigi Jackson and how much work he's already put in to become an impactful one-on-one basketball player. And I use those words very carefully, because he is a one-on-one basketball player. He has been built in a lab, in an opportunity where you're just doing work with a skill trainer and not necessarily a guy who fits into a 5-on-5 scheme just yet. But he's so young. And I think that if he went back to college for another year, or if he were not the guy that came out to South Carolina this year, remained in the high school class, and then was in the 2024 draft, we'd still be talking about him as a potential guy to go in the top 2 or 3 next year. If I'm the Atlanta Hawks or anybody who's outside of the lottery, I'm probably willing to take that swing.
Yeah, I'm not at this high, at least. There's a point where I'm willing to take this swing. The thing about that argument that people make, including the one that you just made in terms of like, oh, if he was in the 2024 draft class, we'd be thinking about him as a potential top 6, top 5 pick. A, that draft class is terrible. B, it is a situation where we would not have the tape that we have now on Gigi Jackson. You're essentially saying that like he'd still be a mystery box in some way in our eyes, right? We've seen the tape though, and like, yes, you're right. Like the creation skills, the handle, the ability to get to his mid-range shot is really high level. And I think like he's going to shoot, and I think he's going to be able to create mid-range shots. I don't know what else he does is the problem. Like he was really bad defensively this year. He was really bad in terms of processing, in terms of turning the ball over. He's extremely young, and I do want to give him the benefit of the doubt. To me, he strikes me as like a Talen Horton-Tucker corollary guy, where like, I don't think that the first team that drafts him is going to get the most out of him, unfortunately.
Sure.
And that's why he will be lower on my board. I buy the upside argument. I do. I think that the ceiling is very high. It's just that I think it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of time. And I don't know that I love him starting his NBA clock this early, I
Sure.
guess is what I would say.
Yep.
So yeah, you're going GG Jackson at 15 to Atlanta. I'm going with the Utah Jazz. I am up at number 16. Oh man, this is not the easiest pick again. I will take the upside swing for me in knowledge that with Utah earlier, I ended up with you ended up with the Utah pick of Ausar Thompson, right? I will take the antithesis of Ausar Thompson here in many ways. I'm going to go with Brice Sensabaugh's upside as a scorer. This is a guy I would rather take than GG Jackson, who has like a similar profile, right? High level isolation scorer, high level, one-on-one playmaker. But I think A, Brice is a drastically better shooter than GG Jackson. B, I think that his overall polishing game is just a little bit higher than GG Jackson at this point. I think that he's less of a project than GG is at this point. I think there's a little bit more athletic upside in terms of his potential to like maybe drop a little bit of weight. He's coming in around like 235, 240 pounds, maybe add a little bit of quickness. I would rather take the flyer on the guy that proved it on some level in college this year that he can be a high level scorer on high level efficiency in the Big Ten, as opposed to a guy in GG Jackson who was just like quite poor in that regard, frankly.
Yep. I think Sensabaugh is a really good fit in Utah too, particularly knowing that they got Ausar a little bit earlier. This is a team that just needs long-term number one scoring options, and you don't find a ton of guys still on the board that have some potential to evolve into that. So I totally understand the pick.
Yeah. That was not an easy one for me. Utah's in a tricky spot. The more I think about some of the questions about should Utah try and package up, I know I answered this differently earlier. Maybe they should try and package 16 to move up and get a guy that they adore. Okay, you're up at 17.
Well, Sam, that's why we do this, right? To go through the exercise and get a feel for where those points in the draft are, where movement is possible or maybe even likely.
I think that's right.
At 17 here, the Los Angeles Lakers, this is another one of those picks that might be on the move if the Lakers are looking for a little bit more of a win now impact down the line. So certainly want to err on best player available. But if I'm going specifically fit here for the Lakers, there's one guy I've got my eyes on. I think they need shooting in some regard, like just reliable 3-point floor spacing if they're going to end up keeping this pick. I'm going to go Keyonte George out of Baylor.
Oh, that is not what I expected you to do, but I'm good with it. It's a reasonable pick. Yeah.
Yeah. A scoring punch off the bench, another guard who just has some self-creation ability while also being able to shoot the ball really well. I think that's one aspect of Keyonte's game that doesn't necessarily get enough love. Like I think he can be a really, really good catch and shoot and off-ball type of scorer, pristine shooting form. Some decision-making stuff that needs to improve with the ball in his hands. I think that he can be a good passer. He did not handle pressure very well this year at Baylor. When guards really got into him or teams sent two to the ball, he struggled a lot to make the right decision for his team. Unfortunately, he played in the Big 12 where half of the teams on your schedule are actually going to play you in a super aggressive manner. So it made him look maybe not the ideal that he's suited for. I don't view Keyonte George as a potential first or second option offensively. I think he's much more of a scoring specialist, third or fourth guy, because he needs to not have the attention of the defense fully trained on him. And if when you go not just later in the draft like this at 17, but to a team like the Los Angeles Lakers who have so many other veteran presences, I think the best version of Keyonte George can show up earlier in his career. So I don't know if he's an instant impact type of guy, but I do think that Los Angeles would be a good fit for him.
Yeah. My thought on what you were going to do here was Jordan Hawkins.
I thought about that.
Shooter, floor spacer for LeBron and everything. I think that's an intriguing option. That's probably what I would have done for what it's worth. Okay, I am up at number 18 here with Miami. Keyonte George off the board. With the Heat, part of my thinking here is that they tend to like guys that are high character, high level workers. They do like guys that will defend, but their culture is so good that I think you can kind of if those guys are willing to buy in and be like high level character guys, I think that they will fix a lot of your flaws a lot of the time and bring out a lot of your concerns. So I'm going Nick Smith here at 18 to Miami. And I am someone who does have some overall concerns about Nick Smith. I think Nick Smith really needs to find the right fit for his skill set long term to be the best player that he can be. I think Miami would be tailor-made for it. I know that they just re-signed Tyler Hero, but look at the guys they're playing. Like, seriously, genuinely, all due respect to the guys they're playing in the playoffs right now. Nick Smith, long-term, could be a substantial upgrade for them in terms of just overall skill, on-ball ability, potential to play off the ball next to Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. His off-ball scoring ability, I think, is one of his best skills, his ability to move off of actions and fly into actions as a shooter, move off of actions, play off of dribble handoff settings, be a cutter, be a really high-level offensive option in that regard. The thing that I really worry about with Nick Smith is on the defensive end. But I can't imagine a better situation to teach him high-level defensive principles. And the big thing with Nick Smith is I don't think it's a situation where he doesn't want to do it. I think he wants to defend. It's that I think he doesn't quite know how to defend yet. After years of playing Arkansas high school basketball, after years of being like the number one guy in his class or top 10 guy in his class, he was a bit of a late riser into the number one range. But I think that Miami would be the perfect fit to get the most out of Nick Smith's talents. And I think that his talent is high level enough to be willing to bet in at this point in the process.
I think that's a very, very solid pick on your end. I love the ability to play on ball or off ball. I think the Miami Heat love those guys because they've leaned a lot into 3-point shooting and floor spacing over the last couple of years, and Smith brings that to a T. He's also a real competitor. I was always impressed by that about him. Like, he seems to really want to play hard and play well. I don't think he knows how to on the defensive end of the floor just yet, but the effort is really there.
Yeah, no, he's like considered a great kid, and he plays hard. Like, the fundamentals and the technique defensively are in shambles right now, frankly. But I think there's enough there to where I feel I will bet on the human there in that culture, in that system, to get the most out of it, I guess is what I would say.
Sure.
Okay, you are up at number 19, Adam Spinella.
Yeah, Golden State Warriors on the clock here. There's been a history of just going upside swinging from Golden State in the draft that I think has to end now. We're seeing the close of this championship core start to creep up on us, and they just need a little bit more instant impact if they're going to keep that window open for as long as they can. So I'm going to go Kris Murray out of Iowa, 3-point shooting, floor spacer, high IQ, like very low risk player. He doesn't turn the ball over a ton, knows who he is, and plays in a very simple fashion. I do think that there's some versatility with him, but more than anything, just another floor spacer that you can play at the wings to guard some different positions right there. And maybe one of those younger guys who can come in and impact the game right away. Yeah,
I don't love this fit in their scheme, particularly, is what I would say. Kris is not a great movement shooter. He's not Keegan in that regard. His mechanics, I think, are going to make it very difficult to be that kind of high-level player. He's a good cutter, and I think he knows how to move without the ball in general. But I worry about the threat that he would bring in that offense. They do have guys camp out, though, like Gary Payton in the corner. From time to time. Having someone like Kris Murray there could be a little bit better. I think they would probably go more towards somebody that has displayed really high-level movement off the ball and shooting off the ball as opposed to Kris Murray, I guess is what I would say.
And the counterpoint from me there would be on unguarded catch and shoots this year at Iowa, 40% for three. So and that's 2 straight years where if you can get him wide open looks, and I do believe that the Warriors have the opportunity to put a guy in the corners and find positive spacing, that he can be probably the most knockdown guy that we'll find left in one of those settings who doesn't have major flaws on the defensive end.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable take. Let's go with the Houston Rockets now.
Okay.
Let's see. The Houston Rockets. I'm going to go Jalen Hood-Schifino here because I like the idea of Jalen Hood-Schifino being a useful player. I drafted Scoot Henderson earlier. Still have Jalen Green on this roster. I personally do not see Kevin Porter Jr. as someone that like I need on this roster long-term, frankly. I see Jalen Hood-Schifino as somebody that could play point guard next to Jalen Green, or could play point guard next to Scoot. Let Scoot slide off the ball momentarily, or could play the 2 next to Scoot while taking on the on-ball defensive assignment that you might not want Scoot to have to deal with. I think there's quite a bit of synergy with a 3-person backcourt of Jalen Hood-Schifino, Scoot Henderson, Jalen Green long-term. That is at least like interesting to me as like a top trio in your backcourt that could maybe, help you along while you work through things. And this is a team like, look, they have Tari Eason, they have, Jabari Smith Jr., they have Alperen Şengün, they have Usman Garuba. Like they have, wing, front courty, Jayshawn Tate options. Obviously drafted Ty Washington last year, who fits a lot of this as well. I think a 4-guard, rotation of those 4 particularly is intriguing to me long-term. Ty was an absolute killer in the G League this year.
Yeah.
I quite like that idea of that trio in the backcourt, though, being your guys.
Sure. A lot of youth in Houston, so there's going to be redundancy anywhere you pick.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that is dead on. Okay. Adam, you are up at number 21.
21, Brooklyn Nets. We got back-to-backs here, don't we?
Yeah, we each get to go help Brooklyn. Let's do it.
All right, so I'm going to help the Nets with taking the guy that I've just fallen in love with here, and I've been looking for reasons to draft him a little bit earlier, but the fit never felt fully right to me. Considered him all the way at 15 for Atlanta. Sidy Cissoko from the G League Ignite. I absolutely love the mental makeup, the intangibles that he brings to the table. Checks a lot of boxes that I have always been high on. Guys who have hit late growth spurts but played as a point guard at lower levels. Super, super competitive guys. Multi-positional defenders. And improvement as a three-point shooter. Sidy Cissoko is nowhere near a finished product right now. He's got a lot of progress to go if he wants to be a reliable catch-and-shoot guy. But to go from 23% a year ago to 33% from 3 playing in the G League really has me super optimistic about the long-term trajectory. Look, he's just a bowling ball of a human being who uses his physicality well. I think he's a really good defender who wants to buy in on that end of the floor. His motor is off the charts. He does have a little bit of that like Draymond Green-y, like I'm going to just be the hardest guy on the floor to try to score, and I'm going to jaw at you the entire game. Like he's an insane competitor. I love that. He's a guy that I would not want to play against. And with his feel, his passing, there are ways to be able to let his skill pop in the half court. So Brooklyn, kind of a blank slate in terms of young players on this roster. I'm just going to go with a guy who I really like to be a rotation player long-term, and that's Cissoko.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I think that's like a completely reasonable pick at the end of the day. I think that Sidy Cissoko is a potential long-term high-level defender that I like the most. Offensively, I think there are some real things he's going to have to improve. An intriguing fit in Brooklyn just because we don't know what that roster will look like. This is almost like entirely in my opinion, like upside swinging scenario if you're them. So in that case, I will just go next. I will take Dariq Whitehead out of Duke and kind of take the antithesis of, Sidy Cissoko on the wing, right? In Dariq, I'm taking a guy that is a super high level shooter and a very, developmentally questionable on-ball creator at this point, I would say. I've always thought he was a little bit overrated athletically. Having said that, I don't think we saw the most of him athletically this season at Duke. He tends to be someone who's much more aggressive, energetic, tries to get downhill, tries to be physical, attacking the basket. And he just didn't have the burst to do that because of the injuries this year. So I think this is a good upside swing for Brooklyn. I would be more than willing to try this. A guy that's a 40% 3-point shooter at such a young age, those guys tend to, figure it out at a pretty real level. 6'6", 6'9" wingspan, something like that. Defensively, it's an adventure, but I'll take the flyer on Dariq Whitehead at this point. I think it's a reasonable place to take a flyer.
Yep, totally agree with that. I think he's a competitor, unreal touch in the mid-range area. So if he can get to his spots, shots are most likely to fall. And I was really high on him coming out of high school. So I like that fit too.
Yep. Okay, let's do it. You're up at 23 for the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah, Portland, we got Cam Whitmore a little bit earlier. It sounds like this should be upside hunting time for the Blazers. Oh, boy. Looking at the board right now and who is still available. This is another tough one. I'm going to go Jordan Hawkins from Connecticut here. If we're keeping Damian Lillard around, I think that Hawkins and the floor spacing that he provides off ball would be a great addition to their offense. He's just the energizer bunny in the way that he can move off of screens. And I think the gravity that he will command, even as a young player and a role player in the league, can do a lot of good things for some of the other slashers on this roster. I don't see a lot of size that's available right here that I really like in terms of value to go out and get somebody who'd be more of a big, more of a 4/5 positionally. So I'm just going to go with a guy who I think can have some impact and bring out the most in the stars of the young players that we already have.
Yeah, reasonable. This is something that I would be very surprised to see the actual Portland Trailblazers do, because this just does not fit their model, seemingly. Like they go upside hunting a lot of the time. But I would say I wouldn't mind this if they decide to keep Damian Lillard. Okay. I'm up at 24, the Sacramento Kings now. This is not easy either.
Yeah.
I was kind of planning on Hawkins, to be honest. I thought there was no way you would take Hawkins there at 23 for Portland, because Hawkins fits exactly what their offense kind of looks for. I am going to go. The Kings could use some help defensively on the wing, and they could also use a bigger body on the interior to kind of give them some more options for moments, like in the playoffs where they went smaller and played Trey Lyles. I actually have this guy a little bit lower on my board, but I think it's a really good fit here. I'm going to go Noah Clowney here with the Alabama Crimson Tide. And the reason I'm going to go Clowney here is I like the idea of him potentially long-term, if he can improve the shooting and some of his ball skills, playing next to Domantas Sabonis in that front court as a real weak side rim protection option. And I like him as a potentially like small ball switch 5, as like a 6'10" guy, 7'3" wingspan, can move his feet. You could play maybe switchable ideals in the playoffs with a Noah Clowney situationally there. So I am going to go Noah Clowney here, even though I think that he has a long way to go. Like I think his game is much more raw than what I think people recognize. He's not even like really a shooter yet. There's some upside with him as a shooter, but this is a pure upside swing. But it's a swing that if you're looking for a good fit within that core, and there aren't a ton of guys that I love as shooters, really only one guy that like I think you can make a case for here as a shooter that would fit in that offense. I'm going to go with the bigger option that I think could be valuable for them to try and get a compliment for Sabonis that could work long-term.
Yep. I think that's really fair.
Yeah. Okay. You are up next. The Memphis Grizzlies, I believe, have 25.
Yeah, Memphis Grizzlies at 25. Look, they've got a hole on the wing, but I don't expect them to find that type of instant production this late in the draft. So I'm actually not going to go with a wing here. I'm going to go with a guy who feels very Grizzlies-esque to me, and that's Colby Jones out of Xavier. Just a really solid, well-rounded player, decent competitor who can change the complexion of some games on the defensive end when he does want to lock in and really take guys on at the point of attack. I've mocked Colby Jones to Memphis for some time, so those who follow me on YouTube know this is a fairly predictable outcome for me here, but I love the feel in the mid-range, the ability to play on ball and off ball. He's really improved as a catch and shoot guy with pristine mechanics now, but more of an instant impact, like depth and bench guy for the Grizzlies to come and play that kind of combo guard spot.
Okay, I'm up with the Indiana Pacers now. I don't mind. I think that's like, I know that he ticks a lot of their like statistical boxes, right? In terms of what they look for.
He does.
I am up now with the Indiana Pacers. I am going to go with, for them, they took Jarace Walker earlier. I still think this is a team that could use some bigger wings. And on top of that, this is a team that has 3 first-round picks, can afford to maybe take an upside swing on somebody, given that I think Jarace is a little bit more of a safer bet to be like a really impactful defensive player, rebounder, everything like that. You kind of look across the roster in terms of wings with size, like Ben Mathurin is like 6'6", not overly large. Jordan Nwora is maybe not long for there. We will see. I think they could actually use another one of these guys that can really make it work on that end. I'm going to go with the upside swing that is Bobi Klintman out of Wake Forest. Now, Bobi Klintman is 6'10". He is a extremely fluid 6'10" athlete out of Sweden. If you look at the raw numbers, he averaged like 5 points and 4 rebounds this year at Wake Forest. I get it. It's going to look silly. But if you watch Bobby's skill set and you watch him later in the season after he had adjusted to what was happening at Wake Forest, I think you're going to see a guy that, A, 6'10", can really shoot the ball at a high level. And I think that's what Indiana is looking for from some of its big positions. B, if you go back and you watch the U19 tape, or U18, I can't remember what it was, from the European Championships from this past summer, you're going to see a guy that can really pass at a high level, can actually grab and go on the break as a rebounder and make transition passing reads. He can actually operate in ball screens at 6'10" and make those wraparound, those kickouts, those dump offs, those lobs that you look for. The upside is through the roof here, I think, with Bobi Klintman, if it breaks right. And I think this is a circumstance where the Indiana Pacers can afford to take a swing on somebody like this, given their number of picks here over the course of this process.
Yeah, really fascinating one. He's a name that's starting to heat up a little bit here on the draft circuit. So, I think Indiana, like you said, 3 first-round picks. Why not take the risk? And for those who might think, why not take it at 29? You don't want anyone to leapfrog you for the high upside guy. Always go with him first.
I think that's right. Okay, you are up now at number 27, Charlotte Hornets.
27. You took Brandon Miller earlier for Charlotte.
Yep.
So they've gotten a really good scoring wing to package with LaMelo Ball long term. I love the idea of continuing to surround LaMelo with a rim protecting big that they've already gotten Mark Williams and floor spacing and just keep the game really simple. So I'm going to take the upside swing here. I'm going to go Jett Howard out of Michigan. I think that he is a guy that does deserve to go in the first round. 6'8" shooter who's versatile in a lot of different ways offensively, can create his own off of 1 or 2 dribbles, really good off handoffs, off screens, good catch and shoot guy. Just the shooting versatility that he brings to the floor, the right teammate to get him the ball in as many opportunistic and advantageous situations as possible. And LaMelo, Jett Howard to Charlotte.
Yeah, and I think that this is where I'll bring up the idea of his on-off numbers that I alluded to earlier with Kobe Bufkin. So Jett Howard this year, when he was on the court, Michigan won their minutes by like 3.3 points per 100 possessions per pivot analysis. When he was off the court, they won their minutes by like 10 points per 100 possessions. They tended to be a slightly better team when Jett Howard was actually off the court. Part of that was, you could say, later in the year, they figured out some things defensively and they were playing better in general, and he missed some time. I think they were playing better defensively because he wasn't there, frankly. He is not a very good defender, but I do really like what Jett can bring as a shooter and as a player that is very good off of movement shots, particularly. The problem is that I don't love him as an athlete, which means that he might not be able to separate off of those movement actions and screens at the NBA level. And we will see. Like I think Jett is someone that this is the range for Jett more than the lottery range, which he was being talked about early in the season and where some people still seem to talk about him. But we will see. Okay. I am up at number 28. I believe I have 28.
Yeah. Utah.
Right. The Utah Jazz, this comes down to two French kids for me, either Bilal Coulibaly or Rayan Rupert. I am going to go Rayan Rupert here. It's mostly because, frankly, I'm a little bit more comfortable with Rupert at this point in my evaluation process. I have seen more of Rupert. I was over here the whole year. I've done like a significant amount of intel work into him. Like all of the reports in terms of who he is as a human being are just like absolutely sensational, elite level character. And you look at the tools, 6'6", 7'3" wingspan, grew up as a point guard. Shout out Adam Spinella, the Spinella special there. Really, really high level defensive prospect. He is very good in help settings. He's very good in on ball settings. He is an absolute monster on that end. In terms of what he can bring to the table in a switchable sense, in a help sense, in a scramble sense, everything that you're looking for defensively with Rupert. It's the shooting, which is a real concern.
Yeah.
Again, given the fact that the work ethic, intel work is as high level as it is, he is known to be an incredibly high level worker. A really great kid, or, has a really great head on his shoulders, very mature mindset, pro level mindset. I'm going to go with Rupert here just because I feel comfortable with him. Even if I think Bilal Coulibaly's, physical tools might be a little bit higher level. Like if you just watch them, like they pop on tape a little bit more. I won't deny that. It's my comfort level with the background that I've done that makes me go Rupert here.
Yeah. And the jump shot needs a lot of work, but by no means is it beyond repair.
God damn it.
Yeah, I know.
God fucking damn it, Spins.
I know.
Jesus Christ.
I know. Well, at least you only get to hear me for one more pick. So that's the bonus for you at this point.
What are we doing here?
Yeah.
What are we doing, Spins?
Well, 29 for the Indiana Pacers. I know what I'm doing. I'm taking a swing for high upside wing and somebody who I think can play next to Tyrese Halliburton long term. We've already taken Jarace Walker and Bobi Klintman, and now we're going with Max Lewis out of Pepperdine. I still have some questions about how long it's going to take for Lewis to become a rotation caliber NBA player. I think he's a lot farther away than people might give credit for, particularly on the defensive end of the floor. But there's no denying 6'7" with decent athletic tools, real length, and a comfort level creating his own shot this year. There's enough investable that if he hits to become that type of player, man, what an addition for the Indiana Pacers that would be, to have a guy like him and Mathurin on the wing who can come in there, space the floor from a catch and shoot standpoint, while also somewhat create their own.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting, like Max Lewis, really bad defensively throughout the course of the season. That Pepperdine team, in terms of like defensive fundamentals, was just very poor, it seemed like, in general. The late season swoon, do you have any strong opinions on that? Because he was very poor late in the year.
Yeah, I think it came down a lot to teams figuring him out and paying a lot of extra attention to him now that they saw he was the number one option for Pepperdine. I don't think that he has the quick reactiveness to make plays for others in a way that allowed him to handle that type of pressure. So I don't see him as a high volume scorer in the NBA level. I think his role is going to be a lot more catch and shoot based, but knowing he has that upside in his bag to go beyond a potential 3-and-D wing. He's obviously got to work on the defensive side of the floor to become that, but knowing that there's a little bit more upside just gives me some comfort that I wouldn't want to let him slide all the way to the second round.
So This is a hard one with the Clippers. I'm down to two guys. One of them is Coulibaly, who I explained a second ago. I think that if Bilal Coulibaly does not get like some sort of assurance, he seems a little bit more likely to move on to the 2024 draft. That comes not from my intel work. Don't report that. Don't aggregate that, please. I kind of want to take him here, but I'm going to do something different. Andre Jackson is one of my favorite players in this draft class. I love him. I've been clear that Andre Jackson is one of my favorite players, point blank, in college basketball this season. I adore the dude. I think he is an unbelievable connective tissue piece. He can't shoot. I'm well aware of that. You know who has shooting all over the court? The Los Angeles Clippers.
Yeah.
You know who desperately needs like an unselfish, gonna defend his ass off, gonna pass and cut and move and make plays all over the court and just be that unselfish, awesome dude to have around while also being like highly competitive and fitting into exactly what they look for in terms of quote unquote Clipper DNA, guys that they really value and trust? Andre Jackson. With the 30th overall pick, I'm going Andre Jackson from Connecticut as my pick for the Los Angeles Clippers. Look, I get it. He might not be able to shoot. And I have real worries about that. You know what? He does literally every single thing else at the highest level on a basketball court. He is a great defender. He is not just a good defender. He is a high level processor of basketball, not just like a solid processor of basketball. I am an enormous Andre Jackson fan. I get all of the flaws. I get the concerns. I am going Andre Jackson here for the Clippers.
Culture changer too. If you listen to the chatter around that Connecticut team, everyone gushes about the type of teammate that he is. And that means a lot when you're drafting for a championship aspirational team like the Clippers are. I get this one. I really like it.
Yeah. I'm just a big Andre Jackson guy. I get it. Some of the guys that we didn't take, Bilal Coulibaly is one for sure. He's actually the only guy in my top 30 that was not selected. Other players, Marcus Sasser, Jalen Wilson, Julian Strawther, Omax Prosper, Julian Phillips, James Najee, Kobe Brown, Adem Bona, your guy. You have Bona in the first round. Who else? Anyone else stand out to you?
Well, I have an unabashed love for Judah Mintz, but didn't find the right team or situation to kind of take him here. Jordan Walsh from Arkansas is another guy that I think gets brought up sometimes as being a late first round guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those are the names. I mean, I wish that I would have found a spot for Coulibaly. I wish I would have found a spot for frankly, I kind of wish I would have found a spot for like Marcus Sasser. I really quite like Sasser, and I think he's like going to be just a good NBA player. And once you get into that 20 to 30 range, like size be damned, he's a great defender, like at the point of attack, great screen navigator. Really big fan. Does anybody else have any questions while Adam and I are kind of talking through the end of this? We will be happy to answer a few if you guys want. I think that is all that I've got on my end, though. I mean, is there anybody that you're looking forward to watching throughout this pre-draft process, Adam?
Yeah, that's a good question for me. So, I mean, I'm mostly through with first round scouting reports and videos. I've got to do Brandon Miller, Anthony Black, Dariq Whitehead, Colby Jones, and Brice Sensabaugh. Those are kind of the five guys who I haven't necessarily sat down and done the big, deep rewatch for. And then I love discovering guys from the second round who, when I watch them, like really start to shoot up my board and like I said, become kind of my guys. And the most recent one for me there is Ben Shepherd out of Belmont. I know you tweeted about him a little bit more this last week. I've been really high.
You made me watch Ben Shepherd. I'm like, actually, I had him at like 65 or so on the big board I did. I think I'm low. I think he's actually like a really interesting second round pick for a team.
Yeah, I love him, and I've been talking about fit for a long time. Like the Oklahoma City Thunder are sitting there with 2 second-round picks in the top 40, and a guy like Shepherd, who another Adam Spinella special, former point guard, late growth spurt, shoots it a little bit, good positional length and size. Like really good movement shooter. I think that he'd be a really good fit in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, I think that's like a completely reasonable take. They tend not to draft like super old, I feel like, in Oklahoma City, but nonetheless. Trying to think who else. I am excited to see Brandon Pajemski in the pre-draft process. I will say him. He is someone that I think, like, if he performs well in the pre-draft process, he could get into the first round, like, pretty real. I have my concerns on if Brandon Pajemski is going to play well in the pre-draft process, but we will see. Price Zimmer asks, who is the guy you're most skeptical on? I would say, in comparison to public like perception, it is probably Pajemski for me. I see him be talked about as a potential first round pick, and I just don't have that at all, frankly. Not to say that like he's not an interesting, talented player, but I just don't have that, frankly. Anyone for you, Adam, that you see yourself as the most different on? Maybe Jett Howard is another one for us.
Yeah, Jett Howard. You and I tend to be more aligned on that one, but in comparison, outside of the Game Theory podcast, I think Jett Howard might be that guy. Another one who I'm kind of struggling with right now to really buy into is Noah Clowney. I think he's 100% like upside and tools, but I don't know if I buy into him really getting there.
Yeah, I have my questions on Clowney as well. I frankly don't like. I have him at like 30 right now, like right on that edge of the first round. I think that's probably lower than where consensus is on him. Player that will impress the most at the combine and move up. I have my pick for it.
Go for it.
I think it's going to be Leonard Miller if he plays. Yeah. I don't know if he's going to play yet, but Leonard Miller is tailor-made for those combine games if he decides to play. And everything about his process to me is just like moving up and up and up. I think he's one that could really blow up. Maybe he doesn't play. I have no idea there, but he's one that would be my prediction. Leonard Miller. Anyone for you?
Yeah, it's always hard to know who's going to play and who's not going to play. Like, I think a lot of times the guys who are most likely to impress are the guys who get a lot of on-ball reps, right? So you tend to lean a little bit more towards guards in a combine scrimmage type of setting. So I'm just going to give this as another opportunity to talk about my guy, Judah Mintz.
Yeah, I like that. I think Judah's an interesting one that could play really, really well. Who do you hope waits until the 2024 NBA draft? That is an interesting one for Judah Mintz, I think, actually, as well. I think there's a real case for him. The guy that I wish would have waited, honestly, and I don't know if he is or not. I mean, it seems like based off of, I think John Cavoni got a quote from his mom saying that he is fully in this draft. I would say Amari Bailey. Yeah. I kind of wish would have waited. And he's someone that like I'm really interested in tracking throughout this process. He's another one that could have been an answer to the previous question. I think Amari Bailey is really intriguing. He closed the season like exceptionally well. After who got hurt? Why am I blanking on who got hurt?
Jalen Clark
at UCLA. Jalen Clark got hurt. I thought he looked really, really good after Jalen Clark got hurt. And I think he's one that really could have been like a high level first round pick if he waited until 2024. Fits UCLA really well, high level motor. I think he fits the Cronin scheme really well. He's one that I don't know enough about his agency situation. I don't know enough. Like I haven't done enough of a deep dive into him yet, but I hope he reconsiders is what I would say.
Yep. Yeah, I think there are certainly guys who like aren't necessarily ready who are in this draft class. Like I would put Dylan Mitchell in that category, but I could see a situation where Bobi Klintman goes back to school and ends up being a top 10 pick next year, the way that he could pop. So I don't think that I hope Bobi Klintman waits until next year. Like I think that there's as we mocked tonight, very realistic possibility he's a first round guy. But I do see an avenue where if he were to go back to school and really dominate after this pre-draft process, he could explode.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with any of that. It looks like that's, so 24 Seconds asks, is there a chance Deron Holmes can play the 4? I mean, not based on the way he moved this year. If he can bring back some of that mobility that we saw last year and shoot it, you can squint and see a world for it, but I think he's a 5 more than a 4.
Yeah. Retweet.
Yeah. Let's see here. Did we get anything else that, like, honestly, guys, like I see a few questions about like trades here. I kind of want to hold off on those just because like it's a little early, I think, to be honest, for that. I think it's going to be a little bit tough to try and navigate that. This is today's this is today's podcast. I'm not going to go live after the Boston Celtics Philadelphia 76ers game tonight. And I won't be live tomorrow either. This is a 2-hour and 10-minute podcast. I am draft guiding today and tomorrow. The rest of the days, I'm going to try and knock out a bunch of profiles. So thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. Adam really appreciates it. We had a great time, diving in for 2 hours talking about all of these prospects. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll do this again. Certainly. We'll probably do something pretty similar on lottery night, to be honest, Adam and I. So maybe not as long, maybe not as into the weeds, but certainly we will talk about this draft on lottery night and do like a little mini mock draft after. So that'll be like a real draft time. We will probably talk next week a little bit about the draft as well. We'll probably talk about the draft once combine invitations go out as well. Other than that, I think that's it. Adam, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, find me on Twitter at @theboxing1_, my YouTube channel, Adam Spinella, or the Substack page, theboxing1.substack.com. Got a lot of scouting reports coming out this week in regard to big men. This is kind of the big man week over at the Boxing One. So Noah Clowney coming out tomorrow, very appropriate. We had some conversation about him here this evening. A lot of fun, Sam. Enjoyed doing this, and I think I went 15 for 15. So my job is secure, at least for this draft cycle.
That is right. I think you did well, Adam. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please remember, rate, review, subscribe, do everything you can to support the show. Hit that subscribe button over on YouTube. Hit that like button. Get this thing out there. We had a great time talking about the NBA draft and doing the NBA mock draft tonight. Anything else? What else do I have? I have 2022 NBA redraft. We pushed it to like Monday or Tuesday next week over at The Athletic. That will be out. My top 100 board over at The Athletic is out right now. I would suggest everybody go read it. I wrote a little bit longer about Kobe Bufkin, Taylor Hendricks, Leonard Miller, 3 guys that went in the lottery as we discussed it today. I think I picked 2 of those 3 guys, so unsurprising there. What else? I think that's all I've got for you guys. So thank you all for listening. Until next time, we will talk soon. Bye.